So, always, I have a cup in my hand and you don't know if it's coffee or water or whatever. I promise it's one of that. And so, here's cheers to a good segment. I have two wonderful women, so stay tuned.
Welcome to our podcast, Doing It Right. This podcast reveals authentic stories from successful leaders doing it right. It's about their journey to become a leader, their choices, motivations, and lessons. In essence, how they built successful personal brands. Your host is Valerie Sokolosky, author of 8 leadership books and nationally known as an authority on executive presence and personal branding. Let's get started. Here's Valerie.
It's such a privilege, every segment, to have fabulous guests, and today is no exception. I have Pat Porter and I have Megan Heber, and they are going to talk about the arts. But before we get started, I just want to, as I always do, tell you, my audience, what a privilege it is to be able to host this show now 6.5 years and moving on, and the opportunity to meet fabulous people, but more importantly, for you as an audience to hear stories that are the ups and downs of real people who have made it to the pinnacle of their life or their career. And the most important thing is the name of the show, Doing It Right. They've maintained their integrity. And so I want to welcome, first of all, two people that are heavily involved in the arts. Now, you know, the arts could make you question a lot of things. For me, it stirs inside of me just saying the arts. Well, first of all, what is it? It makes me feel alive when for me, part of the arts is anything that has to do with creativity. So think about it. That's art, like drawing art. That's photography. That's dance. It's just an industry that has no bounds. But all of it is from somebody that has a depth of creativity and innovation and the opportunity to express it in whatever way they have as their talents. So I have with me Pat Porter.
Thank you.
Welcome, Pat.
Thank you.
And Megan Heber. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you. So great to be here.
It's just a pleasure to have you both. And I'd like to talk to the audience for just a minute and let you know about these two people. So first of all, Pat Porter, I've known, oh my goodness. Well, we don't want to say how many
At least 15.
days. How many days, Pat?
At least 15 years.
That's right. What I want the audience to know is that Miss Pat Porter is an icon in Dallas. She doesn't like me to say that, but I'm going to say it because it's true. She is the woman really behind the arts of Dallas. And she has spent 22 years founding and CEO of the Dallas Business Council for the Arts. And she doesn't even have a big head.
No, but you know, it was so easy to do because it was an initiative that I had passion for. I had worked at the Dallas Museum of Art. I had worked at SMU at the art school. And suddenly there was this opportunity to work for all of the nonprofit arts and cultural community. And I grabbed it.
And when was this, Pat?
1988, I had just left SMU, and thank you, Lord, Ray Nasher called me and said, "Are you ready for a new challenge?"
And tell us who Ray Nasher is.
Ray Nasher opened the largest and still one of the most profitable and successful malls, shopping malls, North Park Center, but his passion was sculpture. He loved beautiful sculpture. He thought it should be around, you could be able to walk around it, look at everything, and it should be among the people. He had a vision of creating a shopping environment that was like Italy, where you go to the great parks and there's sculpture everywhere. Well, he wanted to do that. He did it, and he was successful. And then he opened a new museum that is the Nasher Sculpture Center, arguably the finest center for contemporary sculpture
Contemporary,
in the country. And now he said, you know, what we really need is to make business realize how important nonprofit arts and culture are to the community.
Now tell us about that, because excuse me for interrupting, but that to me is such an interesting, right, Megan, concept, that you were so instrumental in bringing those two together, corporations and art. How'd you do that?
This is 1988, 89, and all of the big corporations across the country were discovering that Texas has land.
And now we want to say, stop, we don't need any more. No, not really.
And we had big spaces for corporate and suburban environments.
Oh.
And they came and they started building. And we had ExxonMobil coming in, and we had all sorts of folks. J.C. Penney moved. People were moving from New York to Dallas. And he said, we need to get those people to support arts and culture.
Smart.
Because they're not going to be able to bring the best and the brightest people in the world to a desert, a cultural desert. He said, we got to convince them. And I said, how do we do that, Ray? He said, I don't know.
Figure it out.
He did. He said, we need more money from corporations, and we need more corporate people involved in arts and culture. Go forth and do good work.
And can I add something right there? Mm-hmm. So at that time, J.C. Penney, you mentioned, so it triggered this to share. I was in New York at the time, and I was with someone who was a vendor at J.C. Penney. So we went up to J.C. Penney headquarters, and of course he was talking to the head people about Dallas and his clothing line. But more importantly, I started talking about just the city. And one of the executives, Pat and Megan at J.C. Penney, said, quote, are there any good restaurants in Dallas? And without thinking, I said, well, there really are, if you can get past the horses to get into the restaurant.
Oh, you did not.
I did. Well, silly question, silly answer, but go ahead.
Well, he gave me an office at North Park, and he gave me a building code that I could get in, and I had an electric typewriter. So what did I need other than that?
That's it.
But the big kick, Valerie, and what I can always tell anyone who's trying to do this in their community, you need a leader, and Ray was the leader. He took me to the Citizens Council, which was a gathering of all of the CEOs of the major Fortune 500 companies that were coming here. And he made a presentation, and he said, you guys are not going to be able to bring your people here. You're not going to be able to lure them to a city that doesn't have the kind of amenities that they're accustomed to. And they all ended up. Now, this is an unusual organization because they were the members. They paid us to be their advocate and to find the best place to invest in arts and culture in the city. We had 200 members. They paid up every month, and every one of them wanted something different. One of them wanted a one-off, and let's do an education program for the kids, and the others want something every month. We need to sell more blue jeans. We need to position an executive. We need to make a change in the image that we have. But whatever it was, we were a cause-related marketing organization.
Isn't that something? And what has grown from that? It's huge.
It's huge. Dallas is one of the metropolitan arts-centric cities in America, and that's because we have how many acres down?
Well, our arts district just won #1 in the nation, and it's the largest contiguous arts district in the entire nation.
It's a 5-acre district.
And again,
So,
we have
huge.
to say, Pat, thanks to you.
But it was built by corporations.
Right.
90% of the funding for the Dallas Museum of Art, for the Theater Center, for the Opera Hall, for the Symphony Center came from corporations who believed what we were selling.
And we are so the recipients as Dallasites and all who now, so many people are coming to Dallas, so many corporations have landed in Dallas and are doing so. Megan, let's talk about you for a minute in terms of you are with SMU, and tell us a little bit about what you're doing there and how it relates to the arts.
Sure. Well, I'm professor of practice in arts management and nonprofit leadership at SMU. I've been in that role for 2 years now, and I get the great privilege and joy and honor of really teaching the next generation of arts and cultural and nonprofit leaders. So we have 3 major programs in our department that focuses on arts management and nonprofits. So our MAMBA degree, our MEM degree, and a brand new online degree that we're in the process of launching right now. But these are students who are passionate about the arts and who are big believers in the transformational change that nonprofits can do to a community. So I get to teach them, I get to lead them, I get to expose them to incredible people like Pat here, and really learn about, well, what will the city, what will arts and culture look like in 10 years, in 20 years, in 50 years? We're going through so much transformation right now as a nation, technological, that the arts will also go through a huge revolution. So how do we lead through that?
So glad you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you what do you think the digital world and AI in particular, when it's making art now, I mean, what is the impact of AI in art?
Great question. I wish I had a crystal ball that I could give an answer to.
Wish you did too.
But I am always an optimist. I like to think that I'm an eternally hopeless optimist. And my hope is that as the digital revolution continues to pick up, and so much of our lives, when we think about it nowadays, is on the phone, on the computer, we're really in our screens. I'm hoping that the pendulum kind of swings the other way about that importance of in-person art making together, that experience of being in a symphony hall and feeling those vibrations with those around you. So I'm hoping the demand for arts and in-person arts specifically increases in the future. And I think it's another tool. I don't think art creating and crafting will ever be replaced. We as humans, I think, like creating with our hands. But what I hope is that these digital technologies and AI just increases the access. So someone who might never have created a painting, or someone who might never have picked up an instrument, they can still find art making and art creating through those AI tools. So that's me as a hopeful optimist of what it will look like.
But you know, there are programs that are working with students now, young kids in elementary school and middle school, high school, that is a creative environment that they want to create.
Children do, then they get it taken out, I guess. I don't know what happens.
It is taken out of them because they are told they have to make money.
And we all have stories to tell. We all have perspectives to share. And I think that that's the great thing that art allows, is it's a vehicle for you to really express yourself. So as a human species, I don't see that going away. And I do hope that this instead increases that ability to tell those stories.
So I had a really interesting experience when we were living in Connecticut. Like your insight on this. It was a big deal in this town in Connecticut, I won't say where, there was an art showing. And audience, I went to this art showing, and it was black and white small pictures of, I don't know how to say this nicely, but it wasn't nice pictures of people. And I walked in and went like this. And of course, I was with people, so I couldn't leave. But I watched, this was so fascinating. I watched these people that I was a part of, the organization anyway, go by, and this is exactly what I saw. I mean, it was as if they were coming up with some kind of an expression. I'm sorry, but my question around that is, how do you know when art isn't art?
Art is such an ephemeral thing, but art is so important because it traces your energy.
It traces my energy?
It does. And it also tells a story of whoever is around them, the creator. It's a story of their life.
Well, that's
and your
true,
life.
probably.
It brings people together because you tell tales. You tell stories. It's theater, mini theater.
Well, that makes sense.
I tell my students often I'm very agnostic about if art is good or bad.
Okay, what's good and bad? How do you know?
For me, I think there's value in all of it, in the act of creating, that
Yes.
the outcome, the product doesn't necessarily matter at the end. Now, if it's a commercial thing, that's different. Of course, there's an expression thing that is also different. But what I also think is that we are so used to art being around us, but we don't really pay attention to it.
Well, give us an example. I know I
Sure.
go to the art gallery.
I have a great example.
Okay.
I was in Charleston last week, and I went to the new International African American Museum. A fabulous museum, well organized, well created and everything. I walked out onto the deck on the 3rd floor, and I looked down. And to me, it was seminal creation, because all the way around the museum, for a full city block, they had created images on the ground of, now this may bother you, the slaves who were brought over on the ships. They were head to toe, and it was the entire sidewalk was created with these images, and you didn't know what it was until you looked down there, and suddenly you realized that that's exactly what it was. That's the kind of art that is around you that you absorb.
And it moves you to transformation. I think too, when we think about art, even if we kind of branch out a little bit further, when we walk through stores, there's usually music playing. When we look at walls colorings, that was probably designed at some point by some artist
Interesting.
experimenting with paint.
Sure.
There's an incredible research study that they think we're actually innately wired to sing first as human beings.
To sing
That
first.
yes, that words and spoken
Interesting.
language actually came as an evolutionary response, but that there's something about the human body that is how we were first
Making
evolved.
sound.
Evolved.
To have sound was through music, and then spoken word came later. So I think that there's something about it that we are built to create. We're built to express. We're built to take difficult situations and create so we can help understand each other and also progress to the next step. I think that's the wonderful power of arts and transformation.
And one of the things that
That's
Megan
good.
and I are deeply involved in is not just art. It is nonprofit community. Look at what music can do in transforming healing in
Yes.
hospitals.
Yes.
Canada is now
babies.
prescribing music, as doctors in Canada are now prescribing music as a medication.
Well, that doesn't surprise me at all.
So it is more about the organization of the nonprofit community around the utilization of arts. I was part of a group that taught in school math, science, history,
STEM.
STEM.
but it was taught by artists, and they used their art, dance, theater, music, writing, to deliver the core curriculum.
Curriculum. That's easy to say,
That's
isn't
easy.
it? No, it's not.
The core curriculum of the school, and the kids got so much out of it because it was accessible, it was easy, it was natural.
And on an individual level, if we think about the transformative power of the arts to the individual, for me, I grew up with a speech impediment. I was
Really?
terrified to public speak. I have this vivid memory of being in, I think, 7th grade, and my mother was the band president for our booster club, and I had to stand up and make a simple announcement. I think it was about t-shirt sales. And I have this vivid memory of standing up and not being able to form any words to come
my
out, that I was
God.
just so terrified of my voice. And what helped me and what changed my life was performing as a musician.
As a
clarinetist.
Clarinetist.
That gave me a voice when I couldn't find my own voice. And now, in some ways, I make my living talking. Sometimes my students probably are talking a little bit too much.
And you know what? There's a great message to the audience for that, because you had a challenge, a physical challenge that you overcame. How did you happen to choose the clarinet, Megan?
Oh, so we were in 4th grade. I'm from New Jersey, so we start instruments in 4th grade.
No accent, I'm surprised.
Well, because I took 6 years of speech therapy because of that speech impediment. So there's a couple tell words that it sneaks in there, but for the most part, those speech therapists did a great job eliminating that New Jersey accent from me. But my mother is a musician, my older sister is a musician, and I always had just like this calling to clarinet. I think it stems from my grandparents taking me to see the Nutcracker when I was very small, and the Nutcracker has just these incredible clarinet parts, and I specifically remember walking down to the pit to like wave at the musicians after that event, and I was only maybe 5 or 6 at the time. But I almost switched to saxophone because in the demonstration class that day, the saxophone player played, Wipeout on the saxophone. And I went home crying to my mother about, well, I want to play Wipeout. And I can only play that on the saxophone because that's what we heard today. And so we had a long conversation about, no, you can play any song on any instrument. You just have to learn how. So I think it was from that Nutcracker, but I almost had a moment there that I ended up as a saxophonist. Although later on I did end up learning saxophone and did play Wipeout a couple times on it.
That's great.
And that's how we got Megan to Dallas.
Isn't that, well, we're so grateful. You've been here 2 years, right?
10 years.
10 years.
2 years at SMU, but I've been a Texan by adoption, I guess, for about 10 years now. Well, Texan by choice.
Welcome, y'all. You know, both of you gave me several of your major lessons in life, and I want to go over just a couple of them in the time that we have. Pat, this was one that I so resonated with. You said, be more interested than interesting. And today, what do we find? I find a lot of people can't wait to just talk.
Right.
Then we don't get any chance to talk.
And that I am known for being able to speak to trees and to people. But if you ask the question, well, tell me, what did you do yesterday? They will love it and tell you everything.
And you just started it with a great open-ended question. Tell me. And you know what? Immediately, great, because that's something that I try to teach people in the work that I do in leadership development. If you just start with the words, tell me, it opens up people's brains.
It does.
No matter how introverted, right?
It is so true. And I really, like Megan, I make my living talking. I did before I retired. And it was so easy to do, to just tell some story and get people laughing. But it's much more effective to be interested in what they're doing than to be interesting to them.
And that starts, I have to say again, kudos to my friend Pat, and you know that it starts in the heart, and it starts with authenticity. So I thank you for that
and
very,
I'm
very
going
much.
to embarrass her, but I did want to really say this today. I mean, I've been so grateful to know you for 8 years, and I think her greatest gift to those around her is always the ability to make them feel like they're the best version of themselves. And I think it starts with that listening and that value of seeing the individual, that everybody's important. Everyone has a story. Everyone is enough as they are. But that is something I strive to emulate from you, is that gift to really make everyone feel like the best version of themselves.
Well, it's not hard to make you feel like the best.
You're too good to me. Too good to me.
What a beautiful compliment.
It is.
And there are
Thank
so
you.
many we could continue saying just about authenticity and people who get to the top and stay so. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about, Megan, which is create a team culture where members feel empowered. That today, in my humble opinion, for leaders is one of the hardest things to do because we're about getting it done. And it's all
Efficiency and
about,
control.
yes. So how do you do that?
I think so. I went to the Disney Institute a couple years ago when I was
Did you?
doing my MBA at SMU, and there was a lesson there that always stuck with me about this.
Okay.
Was how do you get hundreds of thousands of people who work at Disney to feel empowered to create happiness for the guests that they have? And we were exploring that during the week at the Disney Institute. And when this came up of how do you do that, is that they really focus deeply on what is the mission statement that we're trying to accomplish, and then can we empower the people to do that mission statement? And for Disney, the mission was create happiness. So part of their training was, as an employee of Disney, your goal today, in whatever way you can, is to create happiness for the people around you. And that's why when you go to Disney, you'll notice they don't, if there's a customer service issue or if there's something that you need assistance with, very, very rarely will you see them go to a supervisor or a manager and say, oh, I need to talk to someone about that. It's delegated down of, can you create happiness in that moment? And if the answer is yes, they're empowered to go and do that. So I think those conversations is where we start, is what are we
Beautiful.
actually trying to accomplish here? And knowing, as we talked about a little bit before, was you're going to make mistakes. We're humans. We all make mistakes. Being authentic is about also recognizing that mistakes will happen and knowing that your employees will probably make mistakes or do something in a different way that you might have expected or done yourself. And that's okay. It's that learning lesson within. And it's much better to empower people, I think, to try than to have inaction. I think inaction, making some sort of action is always better than just inaction.
Beautiful.
If you are
Well said.
making action happen, others want to participate and they stand up and
That's right.
start.
And the word happiness is interesting because it's, someone might say, well, I'm not supposed to just help people be happy. Well, translate that into a leadership word. If people want a leadership word, what would you say?
I think it's about empowerment.
There you go.
It's about
Great.
empowerment of feeling confident and
Yes.
able
Yes.
to trust yourself. And it goes back to also that trusting of yourself and other people. So instead of creating happiness, well, getting the job done and really making the right decisions, but with the right reasons. I think often we make right decisions with, we don't really think about the reasoning behind it. But if we can make right decisions with the right reasons behind it, then that is true to your authentic leadership self.
Very well said.
And I think that part of it is just having confidence in that team and understanding each one of their skill sets and empowering them to use those skill sets within the team.
And if they aren't given an opportunity to do so, then how are they going to do it? I want to mention one other thing that I have so enjoyed at SMU, which is the Tate series. And Pat, you were the founder,
The visionary.
the visionary of the famous, I would say, Tate, T-A-T-E series. Tell us how you started it.
We were
And
at
what it is.
We were at lunch, and we said, why does no one interesting ever come to SMU? And I said, I think it's because we don't ask them.
Oh, that's too simple.
And so we took a napkin and named who we wanted to see.
Uh-huh.
And I took the napkin back, and I started calling.
I think the best ideas always happen on a napkin,
It
too.
is absolutely true. And I assembled a list of $65,000 worth of speakers' fees, and I put my name on that, and I thought, oh, I can't wait to tell the president of the university about this. Actually, I should have asked the question before I did the contract.
What
the first
happened?
year, we made $100 over our fees.
Well, at least that was over the
Hey,
fees.
we broke even. I thought, this is amazing. The next year we figured out what the most important thing at SMU is: a parking place, by the way. And so we put that with the big dollars, sold out immediately. It is the most successful luminary speaker series in the country, and we make a potload of money.
How can people who don't know about it but live in Dallas or Metroplex, how can they get tickets
It's
to...
very difficult because they're almost hereditary now. You inherit it from your grandmother or your aunt.
Well, besides inheriting, is there any other way?
Yes, and if you're a student, it's especially good.
Okay.
That's why we wanted to do this, was to give the students the opportunity to come.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really want to, they do have a little system where you can pay a fee, and it's taped.
Okay.
I
And you
think
can
some
order
of them are now on YouTube too.
Yes.
So that
Well,
even
they're
if
fabulous.
you're not in Dallas, I think you can see the recorded sessions afterwards.
Yes.
So those of you who are listening or watching, I will say the couple that I've been to graciously have been phenomenal.
Yeah, they're
So let's put in the banner what it needs to say. Where can they go to watch or listen?
The Tate Lecture Series, Willis Tate Lecture Series at SMU. Just Google it, and it will come right up.
Google it. Okay.
And you
And it's-
can get your tickets there.
Okay.
And it now is run essentially by the students.
By the students, which is an incredible. As we close out, and must, unfortunately, let's just ask you each one piece of advice for someone that has aspirations in any part of the arts, be it art or photography or dance or anything that's creative. One piece of advice, if they feel like, gosh, what is this going to be? A lot of artists that I've known have never had the confidence in their talent. So let me start with
Well,
you.
I will just say that what I think they should do is go to the Center for Nonprofit Management and take a course in how to market themselves.
Well, that's good. That is so easy to do.
It
Thank you,
is.
Pat.
And it will give them the confidence that they need
Mm-hmm.
to go ahead and create this piece of art and then know how to get it out to the public. Megan?
So I'm going to do two because I think they're important. I think the first thing is expand your and. Oftentimes we end up in this category or this bucket that we put ourselves in.
Yes.
But one of the things that have been really beneficial to me is exploring different sectors, exploring different things, and really not just being a musician or not just being this, really expanding the knowledge base that I have and being curious about other sectors. So I think that's the first one. And the second one, which you both might relate to, is every time I've had transitions in my life, I have felt confused, I have had tears, I have had doubts about the next step. And when you look at my career and my life, looking back, it all makes sense. That hindsight knowledge really helps solidify everything. But kind of leaning into that uncomfortableness when you're going through a transition. It's natural, it's normal, we've all felt imposter syndrome before about, can I actually do this? Why are they trusting me with this? And then that deep belief in yourself and the knowledge that, hey, I'm going to get through this. Whatever happens, this is going to be a great learning opportunity for me, and I'm going to come out with some sort of new knowledge. I think that is it's going to feel messy. It's going to feel weird. It's going to feel, you might shed some tears. I do a lot. But that moment of looking back in hindsight in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, this is going to make sense.
Oh my goodness, you both.
And seek a mentor.
And
Yes.
seek a mentor.
This one has
And
changed
you-
my life. So
Well, you're my mentor always. Every time I have a question, I call you. I thank you both so much.
Thank you.
It's been
Yeah.
awesome just to talk about, what does that mean? She said, I love you. I love you back. No, you know what? It's been great just to kind of explore what the arts really are, and that the fact that you don't have to be, how will I say it?
Picasso?
Thank you. That's the greatest way to say it. To experiment. You never know what can come out of you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
everyone is an artist.
And there you go. That's a great takeaway. Thank you for being on the show, and
Thank you
stay
for
right
having
here.
us.
You're so welcome. I always leave with a Valerieism. So can you
I'm ready.
wait for that?
I'm ready.
Well, you'll appreciate it, Pat, because it's what we've talked about and you mentioned so beautifully a moment ago. And here's what it is. Don't let doubt dance with you. Don't let doubt dance with you. Well, our lovely guests have talked about ups and downs, and we all have them. And I want to just share quickly the fact that when I came to Dallas, I was certainly not a teenager. And I had moved around the country, and I thought, what am I going to do in this city? But I reached out. I reached out to people. I put myself out there. It wasn't easy. It was uncomfortable. But I will say it again, don't let doubt dance with you. So if you have a gift, if you have a talent, if you have a leadership trait, if you have experience, whatever it is that you bring to this world, people need it. So get out there. And that's my Valerieism for today. And please, if you've enjoyed this show, pass the word, and you too, hit that red button. It's the subscribe button. And it may be a little thing to you, but Google Juice, it matters. So I always tell my guests and everybody else, please subscribe to the show so you don't miss any of them. Thank you so much for your time today. And until next time, stay authentic.
Thanks for listening. To receive Valerie's voice, free monthly leadership tips, and to learn more about her leadership programs and coaching, visit her website, valerieandcompany.com. Next week, we'll be here again to inspire, engage, and equip you with teachable points of view from successful leaders who have been doing it right. Until then, lead authentically.